Okay, so the next part of this video is a bath truffle. Now this is similar to a bath bomb, except this moisturizes the water. So if someone has like extremely dry skin, this is good for them. It has like the cocoa butter in it and it's released into the water. So when you leave out the water, your skin is moisturized. The recipe for this will also be included in the description box, as well as the recipe for the cocoa butter drizzle. Let's get into the recipe. This recipe calls for cocoa butter, baking soda, citric acid, cornstarch, and we are not scenting it. I am going to use a yellow dye because I want this to look like butter, so I'm going to use dye, but you can use mica, you could use cocoa powder, you could use whatever you want to, not whatever you want, but you could use whatever colorant you want to use. So this is the mold that I'm going to use. That's my recipe. This is the mold. I've been using this recipe for an extremely long time, and it works very well. I used to just sell truffles by themselves, but I'm adding this, you know, to the waffle. You want to measure out your dry ingredients and you want to melt your cocoa butter, and while you are measuring out your dry ingredients, you want to have melted your cocoa butter already. You don't want it to be so hot that it starts activating the baking soda and the citric acid. So you want it to be cool where it's still not even cool. You want it to be warm enough not to activate it, but you don't want it to be too cool where it starts to solidify before you get it into the molds and it, you know, forms into the molds nicely. So you want to make sure it's still pretty warm so it can get into the corners and the nooks and crannies of your molds. Okay, so we're measuring out the baking soda first. And also this recipe, you want to pop this in the freezer so it can solidify fast. You don't want it to slowly solidify because it doesn't hold the shape nice, and it also doesn't give you nice smooth texture. So you want it to cool down pretty fast. If you're using a mica, you can add your mica to your melted cocoa butter so that you can get a nice uniform non-bumpy color even color throughout the whole thing. And if you are using a dye, you can put it in the powder and mix it through. That is what I am going to do. And I want to just make sure that I mix the yellow all the way through, because I don't want any clumps of color in the truffle. This can be scented if you want to scent it, but I find that I don't have to scent it when I'm adding it as an additional product because it already smells chocolatey, so from the cocoa butter. And I don't like to use deodorized cocoa butter. I like my cocoa butter to smell like cocoa butter. Here's a little tip. When you are making these bath truffles, make sure that you use a larger container for your melted cocoa butter, because you will be adding the dry ingredients to the wet. So you want to make sure that you have the bigger container so that you're able to pour the dry mixture in it and, you know, you don't make a mess. Alright, so we need 57 grams of cocoa butter. And now we are just going to, like I said, add the dry ingredients, and I moved mine into a smaller cup, into the wet, and stir as you go. And make sure you have no clumps in your mixture. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it directly from the measuring cup. I didn't do it that way because the measuring cup was taking up the whole shot. I'm going to move it into my other hand. And make sure that you want crisp edges. You want to make sure that you don't have any overage on the top, so that your mold, the shape, comes out just as beautiful as it is in the mold. See, my hand's in the way. And you also want to bang this down onto your counter or your surface because you want to make sure all the air bubbles are out. And as you can see, I'm making a mess because I'm trying to do it and get it on camera at the same time without being in the way. And you don't have to fill this all the way up. This is what I'm doing for to give my bath bomb a little something extra. You know, cold weather's coming up, dry skin. So this would be a nice little bath treat. You don't have to move too fast, but you want to move with a little bit of urgency because you don't want it to start solidifying, because if it does, then it's harder to hold its shape. When it's looser, it's easier to, you know, go into the crevices of the mold. But when it starts getting harder, it's not so easy, and you get the air bubbles and things like that, and so those are the things you don't want. And so we're just going to pop these in the freezer until they get hard and they're easy to pop out, just like an ice tray, just like ice cubes. Alright, so we are going to unmold, demold these bath truffles, and these are what they look like. And you just pull it away from the sides and just pop it right out. You see what I mean when you have extra on the sides? So you just want to clean that up. Okay, so we are about to do the drizzle. This is the only one that I recommend doing with a measuring cup. So we're going to add a half a cup of baking soda. And I'm adding the color into the baking soda. The sodium bicarb. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of melted cocoa butter and 2 teaspoons of Polysorbate 80, and that is so the oils can disperse in the tub and not stick to the sides and leave a nasty ring. And we're going to stir this in. And I'm just going to use this as my drizzle to make my butter look melty. Any baking soda left at the bottom, make sure you incorporate it all. Okay, we are both trying this together for the first time. So it could possibly be a fail, but we'll see. I'm going to cut the tip off the pipette so I could get a little bit more drizzle in. And I'm just going to stick the butter in the middle. And just give it a little press so that it stays on the top. And that's that.